Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. And we're breaking ground here today on the show. We are doing something we have never done before, and that is start the show with a graphic on the screen. We're going to talk about the Dodgers again. For those of you that missed it on the show yesterday, we spent 20 minutes talking all the angles of what the Dodgers are doing. And we got a report this morning, which we'll touch on in a little bit more detail. I was going to talk about Tanner Scott. I thought yesterday we talked about all the money that Dodgers are spending and why it's so terrible for baseball. And again, you can check that out on the show yesterday if you missed things. I was going to talk about the bullpen because they signed Tanner Scott, which was the last piece that kind of inspired the discussion we had yesterday on the show. And I was going to talk about the bullpen and say, well, we hadn't talked about Tanner Scott. Let's dive into what this actually means for fantasy. Then we get news this morning that Michael Kopech is apparently going to miss the first month of the season. We don't really know why, but apparently he's going to miss the first month of the season. So what the Dodgers do to combat that is, as you can see there, they have a payroll that is $70 million clear of everyone else in the sport. Their payroll is literally 600 times higher than the Marlins. They went out and signed Kirby Yates. They signed out arguably the number 2 or 3 reliever in the American League last year. Kirby Yates, he's a veteran guy. He's in his late 30s. Had a 1.17 ERA and 33 saves last year. So they lose Kopech for a month, and they just replace him with Kirby Yates. We don't have the money involved here yet, so we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know, is it a 1-year deal? Is it a 5-year deal? It's not going to be a 5-year deal. I'll say this. They gave Blake Trinan 2 years and $22 million to be a setup guy. I stated this yesterday, and again, I spent 20-plus minutes on this on the show yesterday. So if you miss it, go ahead and check that out. You'll want to see, episode 318. This is terrible for baseball. And you can all disagree with me all you want. And a lot of people disagree with me, mostly Dodger fans. Then there's the people that say, well, having the big bad, having the evil empire at the top, that's great for, anger and attention. People want to take him down and all that. I don't buy that. What they're doing is terrible for baseball. It's legal, as I said yesterday. They're not breaking any rules. Good for them. And again, they've got a great business model, and they are killing it. They are killing it. This is terrible for baseball. Greg Ambrosius of the NFBC, both, commented on my comment this morning on Twitter X at the Ray Flowers. You can find me in most social medias at the Ray Flowers. Greg Ambrosius commented on my comment that this is effing stupid. And Greg said, what I really worry about, and we touched on this on the show yesterday too. What Greg says, what I really worry about is there are owners, not just fans, there are owners that don't like this, that understand they can't be competitive in an environment like this. And what's going to happen in 2026 when at the end of the year, when the CBA runs out. We talked about this yesterday. This is terrible for baseball. I don't care. And again, the same people that say it's not a problem, it's fine, are the same people that 5 years ago said that everything was fine in fantasy baseball. And it's not. Okay, I'm not some soothsayer. I'm just speaking the truth. Having a team, with 6 times the payroll of another team, having a team that has such a lead over the next highest team in terms of payroll that it has a bigger gap than a team is paying its entire team, is just bad for the sport. It's just bad for the sport. If these reports are accurate, and Bob Nightingale, he makes some mistakes here and there, but let's assume he's accurate. If Michael Kopech's going to miss a month, and the solution to Michael Kopech missing a month is the Dodgers going out and signing, again, one of the 3 or 4 best pitchers in the American League last year, if that's a solution, we got a problem. If Kirby Yates signs a 1-year, $5 million deal, he made a decision, okay. If it's something like that, any team could have given him that much. If that's all he can get, if that's all he wants, if he just wants to win, more power to Kirby Yates, and we'll see what the numbers say. But it's not going to be a 1-year, $5 million deal, is it? It's not. We know it's not. Terrible for baseball. You can leave comments, by the way, if you're watching live here on the show. at Elite. Excuse me. I forget where I'm at. I'm doing so many shows. At Fantasy Sports Daily. You can do it live on Twitter X, at Fantasy Guru's site. You can watch us live on YouTube at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. You can watch us live at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. Any of those spots, leave your comments, questions, concerns, and we will address them throughout the show. We do this every day on the show. If you don't have the opportunity to catch us live, you're obviously watching us on tape delay on demand. Thank you for doing that. You can watch us or listen to us all the time at fantasygurus.com. Just go to the website, click the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. You can type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your podcast network. And here we go. We're off and running. So I'll continue to keep this. We'll continue to keep this opportunity available to us in terms of checking out what's going on. Here is another comment I'm seeing. MLB Network Radio on Sirius XM has got the former GM Jim Duquette talking. And here's the quote. Every team had the same opportunity to sign him, unquote. Yes, every team had the same opportunity to sign him. And if he took a 1-year, $5 million deal, he just wanted to go to the Dodgers. And you can never stop a player from doing that. Never stop a player from doing anything, right? But Jim, I can't listen to this soundbite because I'm doing the show here with you. And to be fair to Jim, it's a minute and 50-second soundbite. Saying every team in baseball had the opportunity to sign Yates is accurate. But as we talked about yesterday, that's not how the real world works. Players care about two things, as we said on the show yesterday. They care about money and they care about winning. Some care about winning and money, but it's money and winning. That's what they care. That's all they care about. As we talked about yesterday, every day it seems like the Dodgers are improving their team. Every player wants to play for the Dodgers because they all want to win. Number one, the Dodgers will pay them as much or more than anyone else anyway. And they want to win. So it's like we talked about yesterday. It's self-fulfilling. This is not every team had the opportunity to sign him. The Rays never had an opportunity to sign Kirby Yates. He was never going to the Rays. Right? He's never going to the White Sox. He's never going to the Pirates. It's never going to happen. He's an aging player that wants to win. He's not going to those teams. Period. The Pirates could offer him $50 million. I don't think he signs there. Maybe I'm off my rocker, but I don't think he does. This is bad for baseball. Period. If you didn't believe me yesterday, do you believe me today? And again, I don't normally start shows off like this. And, we got a whole plan here that I'm totally going rogue on. But this just bothers me. And it has nothing to do with being a Giants fan. It has nothing to do with sour grapes. I don't want to spend another 20 minutes today. I've already spent 6-7 minutes today. I don't want to do that again today that we did yesterday and relitigate the entire case. But I really would encourage everyone to go check out episode 318 because I had graphs and tables and I talked about this in more depth. This is just bad for baseball. Period. Point blank. End of story. Ugh. What are we planning on talking today? Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Anthony Santander. We're going to use Anthony Santander as an example of how to, because I had a question about this the other day in Discord over at fantasyguru.com. Oh, and by the way, you can sign up for fantasyguru.com. Go to the subscribe tab in the top right corner. Send a note, support@fantasyguru.com. Support@fantasyguru.com. If you want to sign up, or you can just click that Elite Plus tab, or click the subscribe tab in the top right corner. I'm a little frazzled here. I'm so angry. We talked about the fact that I've written 2 articles that are about 11,000 words that talk about how to analyze players, kind of a how-to scout a player. Andy Santander signed a 5-year, $92.5 million deal with the Blue Jays. So he's now going to take his power bat to the middle of that lineup to help out Vlad Guerrero. I thought we would use him as kind of a show, a baseline piece to talk about analyzing a player. So we'll kind of break him down. Again, as you can see there, I was going to talk Tanner Scott. The real question now is Tanner Scott the closer? Is Kirby Yates the closer? Are they co-closers? Are they going to play matchups? So Tanner Scott flew up the rankings yesterday at fantasyguru.com. They are updated daily if needed. He flew up the rankings yesterday. This morning, he's dropping down the rankings. Kirby Yates is flying up the rankings. So like this, if you're drafting tonight, is it Yates or Scott? Lefty, righty? Scott's, I don't know. As of right now, I've got Tanner Scott a couple of spots ahead of Kirby Yates. I don't know. That's what I'm saying right now. There's some other pitchers to talk about that are looking to sign. We'll visit in about 20 minutes now with Armando Marsal. We talk to him every Tuesday. And a couple weeks ago, we talked quarterbacks. Last week, we talked running backs. This week, we'll review the wide receiver grouping in the NFL in 2024. So that's kind of what we're doing today. Again, go to fg.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. I almost went full Jeff Mans. And by the way, Jeff Mans is back on the Elite Sports Show Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. I was with him yesterday. I'll be back with him on Wednesday. Justin Fensterman slides into the lead chair here on this show on Wednesdays. I'm here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern for this show. So you watch this show, you take a little bit of time, you think about it, you go listen to Jeff's show on SiriusXM. Jeff is back. I almost went full Jeff Mans, one man's opinion, which, by the way, if you go to FG, click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page, you can see this podcast here, this show, Fantasy Sports Daily, one man's opinion from Jeff Mans. You can find Justin Fensterman's basketball diaries. You can find Armando Marsal's one man's opinion. Jeff Mans' one man's opinion. Armando Marsal's is Mind of Marsal. I'm getting all confused. So many things to offer at fantasyguru.com. You can find them all over there. Jeff, as he says on his podcast, he says the naughty words. He doesn't say that on the radio, but on his podcast, he lets loose. I almost wanted to let loose here. I didn't. It's a free show. It's on YouTube. We'd probably get in trouble anyway. But bottom line is we got lots to discuss here over the next 50 or so minutes. So let's dive into what we were really going to do today. Let's talk Anthony Santander. Again, 5 years, $92.5 million to join the Blue Jays. I want to use him as kind of an example of just quickly how to break down a player. I was thinking about this as I was getting ready for the show. There's a secret sauce. There is. And I'm not trying to keep anything secret. Again, there's 11,000 words and articles explaining this, and we're going to talk about it here. There is kind of a secret sauce, which I guess is what I get paid for, right? Is at the end of the day, you've got all the information, and how do you put it together? Hopefully you appreciate what we're doing here on the show, and you'll sign up with us at fantasyguru.com if you haven't. If you've been with me for years or at FG for years, thank you for your consistent patronage. There is some level of secret sauceness to it, but I'm going to kind of lay the baseline out here. So let's go through what you should be doing if you're analyzing a player, and we'll use Santander as that example. He's a 30-year-old switch hitter who's 6'2", 230 pounds. He's been for years with the Orioles. In fact, it's the only organization he's ever known. If you look at him the last 3 years, 33 home runs, 28 home runs, 44 home runs, 89 RBIs, 95 RBIs, 102 RBIs. He's hit 240, 257, 235. In general, he appears to be a rather easy person to prognosticate, okay? And by the way, we'll have what are projections? What is the role of projections? How should you handle projections in fantasy baseball? I believe that article comes out tomorrow at fantasyguru.com. So good timing with this here. So basically for 3 years, Santander's been the same guy. One great thing about Santander is beyond the actual numbers he's produced is the following three numbers: 152, 153, 155. He plays every day. Love that, as you're all aware. Dependability grades are available over at fantasyguru.com too. Obviously, he ranked very highly. He plays every day, and he produces power numbers every day. We can feel pretty good about that. He doesn't run, so we don't really have to consider that. Let's look at his batting average. His career batting average is 246. And if you look at his batting average the last 3 years, guess what he's hitting? 244. So just on the surface, okay, we kind of know what we can expect here because the career number matches the 3-year number, all that. You look at his batting average on balls in play. Last year, it dipped a little bit. In fact, it dipped a significant amount. It was about 40 points below the norm. But in the case of Santander, he's a different kind of hitter. He's not going to have a high batting average of balls in play on a consistent basis. The number's only 260. The league average is about 300. He's not going to have a consistent number there because he hits a lot of fly balls. A lot. I mean, his fly ball rate the last 3 years has been well over 50%. The worst batted ball for a base hit is the fly ball. Obviously, grounders and line drives are better. When you have a 50+% fly ball rate, you're not going to have a high batting average of balls in play because you're hitting everything in there. He has consistently produced a launch angle of about 21%. The last 3 years, 21, 20, 23%. So again, tons of consistency. His average exit velocity the last 3 years, 90 miles an hour, 90.6 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour. Tons of consistency. His barrel rate, 11.5%, 10%, 11.5%. Tons of consistency. You don't normally see this level of consistency from a player. So from an analyst perspective, it's very easy to look at Santander's total game and say, it's not just, well, we think he's going to do that. It's that he's done it year after year after year with extreme levels of consistency. And again, this is very rare. Again, I wanted to talk about him because there's 11,000 words discussing this over at the site and because he just signed with the Jays. Breaking him down skill-wise, we see virtually the same guy year after year. He's 30 years old. That's an age on the the calendar that suggests everything should be okay. You shouldn't see a market drop-off in skills at 31 years of age. If you look at the data, there's nothing in the data that makes you overly nervous that that's going to happen anyway. So even if we didn't know what his age was, if we just looked at the numbers, not going to happen. His walk rate the last 3 years about league average. His strikeout rate a little bit better than league average. That's great to see from a power hitter too. The batting average could be higher. It's not going to be because he hits so many fly balls. But the batting average could be higher. It's not a terrible approach, right? So at the end of the day, all of this is really similar. So now what's the next level of analysis? Well, again, he's kind of a boring guy to look at analysis-wise because he's so much similarities across the board. Let's look at his splits because that is something that's going to change this year. And by that, I mean it's going to change where he plays his games for his career. All right, let's look at the career numbers here. In his career at home in Camden Yards, because that's where he's played the entirety of his career, he's got an OPS of 803. Pretty good number. Not great. Pretty good. Okay. Again, this is partly because of all the fly balls and he doesn't produce a lot of hits. And as a result, his walk rate's league average. So he's league average on base percentage. You got the drift. His home OPS is his home OPS is 803. His road OPS was 750 for his career. That's a little concerning because obviously we're losing 50 points there. Now, his isolated power mark is only 15 points different. So he's still powering the baseball, but he's been a lesser performer away than he has at home. Let's look at park factors. He's a switch hitter, so we can't break it down significantly left or right. But let's look at the last 3 years. If we look at the overall park factors the last 3 years, Camden Yards comes in 20th for offense. Rogers Center comes in 15th, slightly better. So that's good, right? That's the ballpark that he's going to be calling home now, slightly better as an offensive environment than the park he's coming from. If we look at the power category, the last 3 years, according to Park Factor's home run category, the Orioles were 20th. Okay, where's Toronto? Let's find Toronto. Blue Jays, 13th at Rogers Center. So we have him moving from a ballpark that overall is worse offensively than where he's moving to. And specifically speaking, home runs is also worse than where he's moving to. So maybe that move from ballparks will help offset a little bit of the quote-unquote road struggles that he's had relative to his home success. Some guys are just better at home regardless because they're more comfortable. All right, so that's another factor here. It may have a little to do with the ballpark. It may have to do with just comfortability too. Then we have to look at the lineup. So you look at the lineup and, you've got likely a top 4 of Springer, Guerrero, Santander, Bichette. And maybe it's Springer, Bichette, Vlad, Santander. But those are probably their top 4 guys. That's really good. Then they've got a guy like Andres Jimenez, who they added this offseason, who's a good offensive performer. Then it gets a little thin. So Santander is likely to hit 3 or 4, I would think. He's likely to have guys on base a lot. He's likely to be very productive. Not an overall as good of lineup as Baltimore, not as deep a lineup as for sure. But being a switch hitter, in a good ballpark, not great ballpark, but a fair to plus ballpark to hit in. And given his player profile, there's no reason to think that Santander sees a significant step back this year, obviously. So that's kind of the system. And again, we didn't get a chance to really dive into everything because so much of what Santander has done for 3 years now has been eerily similar. We didn't have to necessarily break down, well, did his launch angle change? Did his pull rate change? Did his infield fly ball rate change? We didn't have to necessarily dive into these things because there's so much similarity. But that's the general process. Again, there's more information on this over at fantasyguru.com. You can go over there and read the 11,000 words. If you have any questions, you can always ask me in Discord at FG. Happy to dive in and help out there and answer any questions you might have. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner and get signed up over at fantasyguru.com. Let me take a quick look here. I don't think we have any updated information on Kirby Yates in terms of the contract. I'm not seeing anything yet. I don't know if we're going to get it. We'll see. Wouldn't it be funny if Bob Nightingale's report was wrong? I guess that wouldn't be funny. But right now we don't have any updates there. So what we do know is they paid Tanner Scott 4 years and $72 million. So either they made Tanner Scott the highest paid middle reliever in baseball history, or he's going to be their closer. Now, what could very easily happen, obviously, as I said earlier, is we end up with a lefty-righty duo here, which could be dynamic. Let's not forget Yates is not young. His season last year was spectacular, but he's not young. He's not 29, so there's not a guarantee he's going to be able to replicate the success he had last season, but he's been a good reliever for a long time. Again, as I talked about earlier on the show today, I'm leaning Tanner Scott being the lead guy in the bullpen, but as we know, so many teams, including the Dodgers last year, so many teams don't have one guy anymore that just gets 35 saves. A lot of teams mix and match. There's probably a scenario we're looking at with the Dodgers, but we'll see when we get more information there. 4 years, $72 million. Again, Tanner Scott's either going to be the most expensive setup man ever or part of the closing mix with the Dodgers. We still haven't seen what's wrong with Michael Kopech. We'll get into this more as we move forward. Going back to the Blue Jays that we just talked about with Santander, and we're about 10 minutes away from talking some football with Armando Marsal. The Blue Jays are apparently amongst the group of teams that are interested in Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer was still very effective last season. His ERA approached 4, but he had a 1.15 whip. He had a strikeout an inning. He was at a 4-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. Like, he's still very effective. He obviously wasn't on the field. He didn't even reach 50 innings pitched. And that's the big question with Scherzer is, what's the workload going to look like? But he fully intends to pitch. I would anticipate him being effective whenever he's available. I find it fascinating that Scherzer, I haven't got a single question or seen any interest from anybody on Scherzer. Jacob deGrom, everyone's interested in. DeGrom's like 37. Is DeGrom 37? I want to say DeGrom is 37 years old. A lot of people seem to think he's 32. He's 36. He'll be 37 in June. He ain't young, Jacob deGrom. And the last time Jacob deGrom threw 65 innings in the big leagues was 2001. The last 2 years, he's thrown a total of 41 innings at the major league level. Last 2 years, Scherzer threw 43. Interesting how the perspective is or perception is that one is good and one sucks. Let's look at some of the comments here because I see a bunch of comments here. Angelo and Rubby17. Rubby says it's ridiculous. I agree with you, Rubby. It is. Santander is streaky. Players can be streaky, but extremely consistent year to year, which is what we talked about with Santander. And this is, again, one of the main reasons. And I think next week is head-to-head week over at fantasyguru.com. Let me verify that. Next week is head-to-head week over at fantasyguru.com. It's one of the main reasons why I don't like head-to-head because Santander is streaky. A lot of power hitters are streaky. A lot of guys that don't take a lot of walks and hit a lot of fly balls are super streaky. So in the head-to-head game, seasonal, you really can't get more consistent than Santander in a roto scenario if you're looking at the season. Month to month, that's why I don't like head-to-head. Let's see here. Christy said the following. Hey, Ray, this is coming from a Dodgers fan. I see both sides of the argument. I'm also a realist. Until there's a salary cap in place, this will continue. Ultimately, fans will be paying for all of this. Yeah, Chris, and I appreciate you being a Dodger fan and being even because, again, almost everyone that's yelling at me on social media are all Dodger fans. They got Kirk Gibson in their avatar. They're and I said this yesterday. If you missed it, Chris, go check out the show yesterday. I said it. What the Dodgers are doing is legal and it's smart and it's great. It's if I wish all organizations ran their team the way the Dodgers are because the Dodgers have found a way to maximize profits while putting a good product on the field. They've done an excellent job. Now they have more resources than everyone, so that it's easier for them to do it. But they're maximizing what they can do. Other teams you can't say that about. You can say that about the Dodgers. Ultimately, the fans will be paying for all this. You're totally right. And ultimately, we have the power. And I've been saying this a lot. And I know baseball's ratings are up and seems like we're on an upswing here. And this is why what we were talking about earlier yesterday with the ownership and the players union, and why I mentioned the Greg Ambrosius comment earlier today. Baseball is finally trending upward, right? And it's a difficult world to navigate now. It's not like it was 20 years ago when baseball was huge, right? It's a different world now. Remember, by the way, guys like Sosa and McGuire, they kind of saved baseball back in the late 90s. I guess Bonds too, obviously. We have to worry about what happens in a couple years when the CBA runs out, because if they go on strike, it's over. COVID almost killed baseball. For those of you that don't remember, and I know some of you don't remember, COVID almost killed baseball. Over at fantasyguru.com, we were literally betting on camel racing. Like, we were doing everything we could to keep the lights on. PPP loans, it was bad. And then baseball, they argued and fought, and how many games are we going to play, and this and that, and here comes football, and they just blast through. That's why football's king. One of many reasons football's king. But baseball really struggled through that. There was acrimony, and what are we going to get paid? And just, people are dying. Just go out and give them something to take their mind off things. It was a struggle. Now you're getting to a point where things are moving in the right direction, and the Dodgers are making a mockery of the sport. Again, legal and allowable, but they're making a mockery of it. And you're right, Chris, they're not going to stop. There's no reason for them to stop if at the end of the day they're still making money. No reason for it. But you and I pay for it. I bought, I can't say this. I bought tickets for somebody recently. And it's amazing how expensive tickets are. Amazing. And I'm not talking on the secondary source. I'm talking straight from the team. Amazingly expensive. It's a gift from somebody, so I can't mention what it is. I haven't seen, they do it every year. What's the average cost of taking a family of 4 to a game with a hot dog and a soda for everybody? It's $500, $600. I mean, if you got to spend 130, 50, you've got to spend $100 for a baseball ticket, a decent baseball ticket. And you got to spend gas or parking, or you get some, you get a baseball hat, or you buy the hot dog and the soda, and you're spending $500 to go to a game. You can do that twice a year, or you can go buy a 65-inch Hisense U8 TV that you can watch for the next 8 years. Like, you can subscribe to every baseball service there is for that same price point and watch every game on your couch at home with a clean bathroom behind you and your nachos 20 feet away in the fridge. So these teams, you got the A's playing in a minor league stadium. You've got the Rays playing in a minor league stadium for totally different reasons. They're playing in minor league stadiums this year. Major League Baseball teams are playing in minor league stadiums this year. You don't think there's a problem? The A's couldn't figure a way to stay in Oakland until they were gone because they pissed everyone off so badly, Oakland told them to go to hell. So they're in Sacramento at a minor league stadium? I mean, baseball has problems, and they're all simmering right there. And everyone that's saying, well, look at the ratings and the World Series and what Dodgers are doing are great, everyone that's doing that is missing the broader picture. And the broader picture is directly, when the CBA comes up, the players will not want to have any kind of cap they will never want a cap because it stops them from making as much money as possible. They would love to have a floor. They will absolutely want a floor because that means the bottom level guys make more money. They'll be down for that, right? But the problem is that we start then doing what other sports do, like the NHL, where they pull money out of whatever we earn is what the salary cap is or whatever, right? However they tweak it. If you start paying more at the bottom, you start paying less at the top. Because what people fail to forget or fail to understand is the people that have the money will never give the money up. It's not happening. If things are more expensive for the people that have the money, they're charging you more money for the product. You will be asked to pay more, or you will be asked to pay the same thing for a lesser product. They'll give you less Doritos in your bag. They'll give you, a sole in your tennis shoe that doesn't last as long. They'll charge you more they'll say, well, yeah, we're not going to charge you more for tickets, but the beer is twice as much money. You pay the difference. Rich people aren't giving their money back. They're not. They're not. They will make the product worse, or they will increase the cost. They're not giving their money back. This is a problem because we're going to run into that where the owners are going to fight amongst themselves. The owners are going to fight with the players, and it's going to be, holy crap, what are we going to do here? Is it going to be a lockout? Is it going to be a strike? What's going to happen? Something's going to happen. And the foundation of the game of baseball that we all love is a couple of years away from doomsday. And we'll see if they can avoid it. Superman was killed by doomsday. He came back. Well, for a while there, we didn't think he was coming back, right? Might be the same thing with baseball. Maybe they come back. Maybe they don't. And I'm really concerned that they're on the precipice there. They're right there on the edge. I'm worried about it, as you can tell. Yeah, Angelo, imagine a team protested by not playing the Dodgers, forfeiting no ticket sales. Yeah, they can't do that. But I know what you're saying. The fans can do that. Now, that's really what this comes down to. You as a fan, Angelo, if you're not living in LA and you're a Dodger fan, if you're living anywhere else in the country, and the Dodgers come to town, don't buy a ticket. Now, the problem is no one's going to do that. When they went to interleague play for baseball, I didn't go to an interleague baseball game because I thought it was the dumbest idea ever. I didn't go to an interleague baseball game for 15 years. True story. My family had Giants season tickets from the 1970s. I grew up at the state. I grew up at Candlestick. Okay. I didn't go to an interleague baseball game for 15 years. The only reason I went for an interleague baseball game is because it was an event. Like I didn't specifically target tickets to go buy and take my girlfriend. Never did that. I still have never done that. No, because I thought it was bad for baseball. Now I have the fortitude or the obnoxious stubbornness to do that. Not everyone does that. Am I going to buy tickets to come watch the Dodgers? Why would you? Oh, I want to see Shohei Ohtani. I get it. Yeah. Who is this Sasaki kid? I want to see him. Hey, Mookie Betts is a great dude. He's a 300 bowler. He came to my town, signed autographs for my kid. Great. You going to pay him? Pay to watch him? It's up to you guys and gals. It's up to all of you. Because ultimately, the Dodgers can only spend what they make. If you don't buy the hats, if you don't buy the jersey, if you don't buy the tickets, they don't have the money. That's not going to happen, though. So it's kind of a moot point. But, yeah. Yeah, Angela, you're right. Parking is more than a ticket. Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. The surge pricing is terrible. You see the Pirates, it's $50 for a ticket. The Braves come to town, it's $100. The parking when the Pirates are in town, it's $25. When the Braves show up, it's $50. It's ridiculous. It's all ridiculous. And I'll end this here so we can talk some football with Armando and Marsal. The fact is that there are so many things to do in this world. And I think people really recognize this with COVID back, years ago, 2020, that there's so many different things to do in this world. People just move on anymore. And this has been my final argument that I made yesterday too. People say, oh, it's great to have someone to hate like the Dodgers and everything. It's not great because people just move on. The world is a different place. People just don't deal with Ray Flowers doesn't deal with nonsense anymore. There's nonsense. I'm just out. I'm doing something different. And I think the world is like that. People just move on. And, the 75-year-old dad the grandfather who taught the 50-year-old dad, who taught the 25-year-old son, those people will still be baseball fans no matter what. But everyone on the edge, everyone you're trying to pull in, they're not. Jeff Mans talks about this all the time. His son doesn't play baseball. My brother's son doesn't play baseball. All they care about is basketball. That's it. They don't care about baseball at all. I walk around and go take my dog out. There's never anyone on the baseball field, ever. Kids don't play baseball anymore. They don't. We get all the kids in baseball come from other countries. They don't come from the United States. It's a way of life in these other countries. Here, no one cares. They're on their iPads and their Game Boys. Or their, what are they? Switches. Or their Xboxes. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, I don't want to ramble on. I only talked about half the players I wanted to talk about today. But I guess that happens sometimes when you get angry and a team is trying to ruin the sport. Let's bring in Armando Marsal for some happiness and some smiles and to save us here. Armando, the Dodgers are ruining baseball. You're going to help us save football, though, right? How you doing today?
I'm doing good, Ray. I saw that. I saw some of the headlines here this morning on the social medias and stuff about the Dodgers. But yeah, fun weekend of football, I think, right? I think there was some enjoyable football this weekend. That's it. 4 teams left. The conference championship round now, and then we got the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. So really looking forward to the next couple of weeks, Ray.
Let me ask you a question. Jeff Mans asked me this question yesterday too, and I want to get your thought on it. Did Mark Andrews cost the Ravens the game? Because he dropped the ball. The 2-point conversion would have tied the game up with under 2 minutes left in the game. Did Mark Andrews blow the game for the Ravens?
No, I think he just didn't give them the chance to win. Like that's it. Like I don't think he blew it. You always look at that last play, right? And I kind of look at these things, and you always look at that one last play that everyone thinks defines the moment. Number one, there was still like about a minute and a half left on the clock. Josh Allen was going to get the football. Josh Allen could do a lot of damage with a minute and a half in the tie ball game. We've seen him, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson on the other side. We've seen them come back in these situations to win a game. There was other things, right? There was turnovers in this game. There was just plays that were made. It ultimately came down to, yes, he didn't catch that 2-point conversion, ended up not being able to tie the game. So we look back and say, okay, well, that was it. But I think it's not just that. I think that didn't help, obviously, and I think that cost him the opportunity to maybe get that chance to win the game. I don't necessarily think that that's the reason they lost that game.
That's exactly what I said yesterday. And there's a lot of people that are like, "Oh, Mark Andrews." It's like, guys, gals, like every play in this game, any one of those plays different at any point, it may not have mattered, right? So anyway, okay. So I'm glad we're on the same page with that. Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. As I talked about earlier, you can find more of Armando, obviously, at fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe tab in the top right corner. He's one of our lead guys on football and basketball, so he's rocking and rolling in the hoops category right now. There's the DFS hoops. There's the wagering hoops. Get the MVP plan. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. And you can also get his podcast, Mind of Marsal. Go to the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. Find his show as well as this one stashed there. We've talked about quarterbacks and running backs the last 2 weeks, Armando. So let's talk some wide receivers today and kind of just go through the list here. And it's tough because a lot of these guys that we're going to talk about, you've got coaching changes incoming. There's obviously the draft incoming. There's player personnel changes. We don't necessarily know who quarterbacks are going to be. Drake London is going to have a quarterback, and it's going to be a youngster in Michael Penix. And, London had a strong season this year, finally getting to the level that was expected of him when he was drafted. Didn't look like he missed much of a beat with Penix at the end of the season there in those couple of outings. Another season in 2025, like 2024, is this kind of who Drake London is at this point?
I think so, Ray. I mean, you look at the numbers here, and it was a good season for him. And you mentioned it, like down the stretch when Penix was under center, it really didn't change it. On the contrary, we saw that kind of the target share be higher. If you go back to like week 13, 42% target share, then you have 27, then 19, then 31, 37, 49. I mean, you saw that target share be very steady down the stretch. And for me, you look at Drake London. This is kind of what we expected this year out of him. 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. I think this is what we're going to see moving forward. I don't think, regardless whether who's under center, Penix is what we expected to be the case. So I don't think that's going to, cause any negative for London. So I do like him here going forward. He excelled in that third year generally. A lot of these young wide receivers, they kind of take that next step in that third year. And going into the fourth year, I think he's going to pick up right where he left off. He's going to be that number one receiver here for Atlanta. So yeah, for me, I'm going to be investing in him moving forward. He's someone that in Dynasty, I have a couple of shares of, so I'm very happy to see, his production this season, Ray.
What about the two guys with the Seattle Ball Club? Now we got coaching changes going on there. We've got Geno Smith, who I think we've talked about this. I know we've talked about it here on the show that, that his contract, he got a multi-million-dollar bonus for completion percentage, which in my opinion is not a thing you should give to quarterbacks. I don't know if that incentivizes them to chuck balls up. He's going to get millions of dollars for completion rates, but regardless, it seems like he's going to be back under center for the Seahawks. And we've got two guys that look totally different, that fill totally different roles on the offense, and who had totally different fantasy seasons this year. DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba. What's 2024 going to pretend for 2025? Is it a changing of the guard, Armando? Is JSN clearing away the guy to use in the fantasy space? Are we going to see a repeat for these two? What are your thoughts?
I think JSN is going to give us the safer floor of the two, right? You mentioned it, Geno Smith looking for that completion rate. JSN lines up out of the slot often, so I think he's going to get more of those, shorter passes, those in the middle passes. So I think that's what you're going to see. I think he's going to be your weekly floor, and I think DK Metcalf is going to be that guy that gives you that high upside, but a volatile weekly floor. I think that's the receiver he's become. You saw it, this season. He had some massive, massive games early on in the year with a couple of 20-plus fantasy point games in PPR settings, and then that kind of disappeared. He didn't have those explosive games. So for me, there is going to be volatility with Metcalf. I still think they're very different receivers, like you mentioned. So it's not like they're going to be, cutting into each other as far as route running, as far as, snap share. They're both going to be on the field. They're both going to be, very effective as to what they bring to the office. For me, it's going to be JSN going to give you that safer floor. But again, it really depends on what we see here. If there's any changes, coaching and whatnot, I think that can also change the way we approach this offense.
Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com joining us here on Tuesday, as he does every Tuesday. The next guy I have to talk about, and this guy is really difficult to get a handle on. For years, Jerry Jeudy was expected to take a step, and he just never did. Injuries and poor performances. This year, the numbers explode. Now he worked with, I think, 4 different quarterbacks, like all these different guys throwing in the football. The guy that he produced with was Jameis Winston. He really didn't do much with the other quarterbacks. With the other quarterbacks, he was basically Jerry Jeudy. But Jameis Winston comes out there and here's 12 targets every week, and he's having these massive games. So the overall numbers for Jerry Jeudy look fantastic. It was basically driven from working with Winston. It's not likely that Winston's going to be the starter next year for the Browns. So how do we view Jerry Jeudy now, given the numbers this year that were terrific?
Yeah, so I had this conversation with Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey on SiriusXM. And for me, this is one of those situations where there's so many moving parts that you just have to pay attention to what happens here as far as coaching is concerned, as far as quarterback situation is concerned. This is a team that historically likes to run the football, right? And there's a lot of mouths to feed here. Cedric Tillman also got injured down the stretch. It's something that we also have to take into consideration here. He'll be healthy next year. So I think this is one of those offenses that there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and it really is going to be dependent on what happens at the quarterback position, the coaching situation, before you make a good decision on Jeudy. If you're drafting now, you're probably going to have to overpay because a lot of people are going to go just based on the results from this past season. So you just have to keep that in mind. But so long as this price is not inflated, I don't mind investing in Jeudy right now. But again, this is a situation where I think there's a lot of unsolved puzzle pieces to this puzzle.
So if you had him in a keeper dynasty league, you selling? Is that just this prudent thing to at least consider right now?
I think you could sell him at a high price right now. Yes, absolutely. I think if you're out in the market right now looking for pieces, if you're rebuilding or something like that, and you're trying to get draft picks or even young players, or just a couple of pieces, I think he's someone you could definitely set high on right now.
Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com. Tyreek Hill, I don't know if he wanted to play football this year. You're down in Florida. I don't know if he wanted to play football this year. I don't know what was going on. He hurt his wrist, which somehow made it tough for him to run. I don't know how that works. He seemingly has another kid every 3 months, and I'm not exaggerating. He's got like double-digit kids now. He legitimately says he wants to be a porn star when he retires from football. After the game, he basically said, I'm out. I'm never playing for the Dolphins again. I mean, I've been out on Tyreek Hill for years. I'm out, right? I've been out. I don't appreciate the guy and what he's done off the field and all that. What do you do with, it's Tyreek Hill. He's still due $25 million or whatever. He's still somebody that should command wide receiver one volume. Like, how the hell do you look at what happened this year with Tyreek Hill and have any good feeling about what's going to happen for him moving forward?
Yeah, this is another one of those situations. Like, he's a disgruntled receiver, right? With, I think, a lot of baggage when you talk about everything off. Correct. With a lot of baggage off the field. Right. And I think that leaked into this, this season into the locker room with him. I really do think and onto the field. And I think that coaching has a lot to do with that, right? Because I think if it was Andy Reid coaching him, he would have been able to contain him. I think if Tomlin. It was Mike Tomlin, exactly. Like, if you had the Bill Belichick's of the world, like these coaches that have been around, I think you could have contained that, right? But with McDaniel, he's kind of come off like one of those coaches that is trying to be more of a friend than the coach. And I just think that right now that locker room, I'm very concerned about that locker room. Number one, I'm concerned about the fact that the McDaniel doesn't make adjustments. A lot of defenses kind of caught up to what the Dolphins offense does. Tua, I think, is very limited to what he's able to do, and he's also incapable of staying healthy. I think that also plays a role. So you have all of these moving parts with Miami right now, and you have now a receiver that is, in my opinion, a head case right now in this locker room. I think that's just going to create problems. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to move him here going, but the thing is, who's going to buy a disgruntled receiver at face value? So I'm not investing in him. I didn't invest in him this past season. He was off my radar. I just thought you were paying premium price for him. And, I didn't expect this kind of up and down, but I just expected Miami's offense not to live up to the expectations going into, this past season.
Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com. He didn't get detained by police officer at 3:00 in the morning for a potential DUI. He got detained driving to the football game.
Yeah.
Like I have been in a Tyreek Hill scenario personally. One time when I was in high school, I was detained by the police. I was handcuffed. I was put in the back of the police car. The whole thing. It wasn't me. It really wasn't me. It was a different car. A whole big thing. I guess I could tell the story sometime. But I didn't fight the police. I didn't yell at the police, and they let me go, and everything was fine. And I guess they eventually did with Tyreek Hill, but I got arrested because they thought that I was out driving around smashing mailboxes and stealing mail. Like Tyreek Hill could have just talked to the police officers, but he got so agitated they had to handcuff him. Like it was a different scenario. Anyway, I don't have 14 kids, and I was never a porn star. Nico Collins. We spent a lot of time talking about how good Nico Collins is, rightfully so. And every time he's on the field, Armando, he gets it done. And a lot of the focus has been obviously on CJ Stroud and the struggles of the offense down the stretch. But Nico still produced, even without Diggs, even without Dell on the field. No matter what's going on, are we just kind of in that zone right now that, yeah, Nico Collins, he's a wide receiver one, and that's just the way it is?
Yeah, going back to last year, he was entering his third season, and I was huge on Nico Collins. Like I was very, very. He was one of my highest owned wide receivers in best ball, and that kind of continued to leak over into this season. I've been a big fan of his. I think he has a lot of the skill sets and to be that receiver, and he's showcasing that right now. And I think he's going to provide you a consistent floor on a week-to-week basis so long as he's healthy. I mean, he missed what? He played 12 games this year. He had over 1,000 receiving yards. He finished as a top 10 wide receiver in PPR points per game and half PPR points per game. So like very consistent. I'm going to continue drafting him as such. And I don't think you're going to have to pay premium dollar for him because since he missed time, he finished as wide receiver 22. And a lot of people just look at that. Oh, he was a wide receiver 2 last year. No, he was producing as a wide receiver 1. The problem is he missed 5 games. So it's a big difference there. He could have easily finished as a top 10. I would even say top 7, top 6 receiver had he played an entire season. So yeah, he's someone I'm going to continue to invest in. I think you can still get him at a reasonable price in Dynasty League. So if you can go out there and get him, I'm totally in on buying in on Nico Collins. And if you're into the rookie card business, go invest in some rookie cards as well. I have a couple myself of Nico Collins.
Oh, there you go. I have Nico Collins on my Dynasty League, so I drafted him. I don't have cards, but I've had him for years. And so really looking for that 17-game season out of him.
Yeah.
Next guy up is younger. And, when a rookie goes for 885 yards and 8 touchdowns, that's a really good season, historically speaking, for a rookie wide receiver. When Marvin Harrison does it, it's like, eh. And, he had 3 games of 65 yards this year. And he had 7 games where he didn't hit 40 yards. Like, even though the numbers are there, like, think about that. 40% of the season, he didn't get to 40 yards in a game. I mean, it was bad based upon expectations. Now, people overdrafted him, and we talked about that at FG. His ADP was 15th overall, so it's nonsense. People overdrafted him. And in the end, the numbers, again, for a rookie are really good. But for Marvin Harrison, they were disappointing. And I think the real question is Marvin Harrison someone we thought he wasn't? The real question for me comes back to where I was questioning 7 months ago. Who the hell's Kyler Murray? Kyler Murray he's never been able to produce those big numbers with 1,000-yard season from a wide receiver that he's ever created. Did we get it wrong with Marvin Harrison? Is this the team and Kyler Murray, or is it Marvin Harrison?
Well, I don't think we got it wrong. I think a lot of people got it wrong, if we're being honest. Yeah, I think he was being overdrafted, right? Like, I think what happens is the expectations and you start buying into what his ceiling is, and you think, all right, well, as a rookie, he's going to hit his ceiling. I think we all know what Marvin Harrison's ceiling is, right? Like, I think we can all agree it's pretty high. Was he going to get there as a rookie? No. Why would we think he was going to get there as a rookie? Malik Neighbors, another very talented receiver. He had a phenomenal season. He didn't hit his ceiling as a rookie. Like, I think he returned the value that everyone was expecting of, someone like Marvin Harrison. But you look at you said it, Ray. Like, if you look at the production for Marvin Harrison Jr., it was up and down, up and down, up, and it was more down than up. I think he's only going to get better. And I like the idea of buying the discount because a lot of recency bias going into next season is going to be, well, he wasn't that guy. He's not that guy. And I think now us that, we're paying attention, I think now's the time to invest, right? Like, I think his ADP is going to take a hit because of what happened this past season. And I don't think I think he's only going to get better. I think this was maybe his floor of a season in his career. I think this was his floor. I think it's only going to get better. And yeah, I think that the biggest issue, like you said, is Kyler Murray. I think you have to realize what kind of quarterback you have. I don't think he's an elite quarterback. I don't view him as an elite quarterback at the NFL. Can he get Marvin Harrison to the next level? Sure. But like you saw, there's going to be some growing pains and there's going to be some uncertain floor on a week-to-week basis. So for me, I'm going to be investing him in this next season. I'm not surprised that he underwhelmed this year. I just think we have to temper expectations sometimes for these rookies.
Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com joins us every Tuesday at about 12:30 Eastern time. As a rookie, Josh Downs was pretty good. 68 catches, 771 yards, really good rookie season. Comes into year 2, and the numbers are basically the same, but he did increase his touchdowns by 3, and he played 3 fewer games. So he was easily going to catch 80 balls for 900 yards this season, 6 touchdowns. Like, again, a step forward. Is this it, though, with Anthony Richardson? Like, that's the real question with Josh Downs, I think. He's usable. Sure, he averaged 13 PPR points a game this season, but can you see him taking that next step if Anthony Richardson's the quarterback of the Colts?
I just think it's going to be very inconsistent. I think that weekly floor is going to be very inconsistent. Well, you mentioned it. The bright side here is that he went from an 18% target share to a 26% target share. So much more involved in the offense. Problem is you have a quarterback that is so inaccurate that, just misses a lot of throws. And that in itself is going to cause a week-to-week inconsistent floor for the receiver. I think that's going to be the issue with Downs. If Richardson could somehow fix the inaccuracies and get better or get more accurate, find a way to be more accurate, I think we're going to find more production on a consistent basis from Downs. I still think in best ball scenarios, I think you can invest in him because he does have some pretty big peak weeks. And I think that, his price is going to be reasonable going into this season. So in that aspect, I don't mind it. But on a week in a seasonal league where you have to set your lineup each and every week, just understand the kind of receiver you're investing in when you're investing in Downs. It's going to be very volatile because of the quarterback play, not because of his talent or his role in the offense. It's just the quarterback situation is very, very high variance.
Let's talk about a final situation before we deal with some of the comments in the chat room from folks. Armando, Xavier Worthy, I mean, down the end, he was consistent, right? So he was catching 5 balls for 50 yards a week down the stretch. Good for him. He had no games of 80 yards receiving, 0. And this is Mr. Speed that everyone was convinced was going to be ripping off 50, 60-yard touchdowns. He didn't have a single game of 80 yards, 0. He had 7 games of 25 or less yards. Woof. Like, woo. We don't know. Is DeAndre Hopkins coming back? Is Hollywood Brown going to stay healthy? Are they going to make a signing? You have to kind of think they are. I mean, at some point, don't the Chiefs have – maybe they don't. They won the AFC. But at some point, don't they have to bring in receivers that can do something other than catch, 5-yard curl routes? What do we do with Xavier Worthy? Because I think we saw what the ceiling is, and it's not overly exciting, and the floor wasn't there. So – is he anything other than we saw last season, or is he more of that gadget player that some people kind of thought when they saw him getting knocked over from hand checks in spring?
I think when it comes to him, it's really dependent on what they do, because I like to look at, and this is not the end all be all, but I like to look at kind of down the stretch how a player, especially a young player, their role in the offense, see if it grew from the beginning of the season. And if you go back to the numbers, I mean, from week 12 on, he had at least 6 targets in every single game. To me, that's noteworthy. You look back at this, the division round, he was second in targets behind Travis Kelce. He was led the team in receiving routes run. Now, if they come and they add a player, right? We can't forget about Rice either. So they come and they add a player, right? Rice is healthy, no suspension, all of that stuff. It changes the dynamic of this offense, which is in itself is going to, change Worthy's role. So I think that we have to pay close attention to that. I think right now he's benefiting from the fact that, the lack of weapons and the lack of options. But, if you add some pieces here, I think his talent and his, and what he brings to the table is not limited, but it is capped. And I don't think he's an alpha receiver, and I don't think he's going to be an alpha receiver in the NFL. Like you said, a gadget player, but I think his role is going to be dependent on the pieces around him. And right now, DeAndre Hopkins, obviously at the tail end of his career, right. Marquise Brown returned, missed most of the season. So Juju Smith-Schuster, So that's what we're dealing with here in this offense. Rice back next season, healthy, no suspension. If they add another piece, that has to be taken into account here. So I'm not going to be over-investing Worthy. It really depends on where he's going for me.
Marvin Marsal of fantasyguru.com. We'll have him on next Tuesday. We'll finish things up talking tight end. And we won't just talk Mark Andrews. We'll talk or Travis Kelce. We'll talk some tight ends. There's still some players to talk about at that position besides the obvious ones. Let's go to some of the comments here. David P says the following, Armando, I was talking about the Dodgers and the fact that the Dodgers, I don't know if you've looked at the numbers or saw the show yesterday. The Dodgers are already like $70 million ahead of everyone else in terms of their payroll. Their payroll is projected to be 600% higher than the lowest team. Like, it's really bad. They went out and signed Kirby Yates today. David said the following, I agree with your opinion on the Dodgers and having a major problem. They want the younger generation to be involved, but I can't take my grandkids to a game. And this is something I brought up today, and you deal with this. You have kids. You take them to games. I was talking earlier. I mean, it's like $500 to take your family of four to a baseball game. And, you can do it for football because there's 8 games, 9 games a year. There's 80 games in baseball. Like, it's becoming more difficult for the average person to find time and the money to do this. You see that as a growing problem in baseball, or am I making too big a deal out of that?
No, it is an issue, especially like if you're trying to take a family. You mentioned like because not only, all right, like the tickets, there's some that are affordable, and some good seats are affordable, especially down here in Miami and for the Miami Marlins. Mm-hmm. But then the concession center, right? Like that's where they get you. It's like a hot dog and popcorn and water, and then you get a pizza for the other kid. You end up spending like $100 on this kind of food. So yeah, it does become expensive. And then they have all these fees. And in addition to the ticket fee, they have like 5 different processing fees and all that stuff. And they told you can't just go to, like back in the day, you can't just go and buy a ticket at the gate. It's like, well, you have to download this app and go through this. So it does become very pricey. Like you said, you can do it a couple times a year, but it's not something you could do, once a week or a couple times a month, the way that these ticket prices are at some places.
Doug has a suggestion for those people that are angry. Doug says, everyone open your window and shout, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. You ever done that, Armando? You ever yelled that out the window while you're driving down the street?
Well, I've yelled inside the car with the windows shut, though. Like, I'm not going to put that out there. I just leave it in the car, Okay. Leave it in the car. No one out there
mad as hell. What movie is that quote from? Someone help me out. I know it's I'm not going to take it anymore. I can't remember what movie it's from.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, someone will hit us up in Discord, I'm sure. Going back to David, a legitimate football question for you, Armando. Ben Johnson is now the head coach of the Bears. I think the excitement will grow, obviously, with Bear fans. This has to be considered a positive for them, especially for the offensive side of the football. David wants to know, DJ Moore, Odunze, Caleb Williams, how much does their stock rise with the addition of Ben Johnson? We don't know who the OC is going to be. We don't know who the DC is going to be. Like, there's a lot of coaching decisions and stuff to be made here. But Ben Johnson's in charge, and he sure had things humming in Detroit. How excited are you now about where we're sitting with the current Bears crop of players?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Lions offense looked good this season, right? Like, they have a good supporting cast there. I think if you look at the Bears, they have a good supporting cast. I believe that they're going to really address that offensive line. I think that's a key piece of that. So I'm excited for this offense. I'm excited for the addition of this coach. I'm excited for what he brings to the table. But like you said, now we got to see what they do with the offense coordinator. We got to also see what they do with the offensive line. A lot of what made Detroit work was that offensive line blocking and protecting Jared Goff. We always talk about this. We have an article every season in the offseason about the importance of, offensive lines and how good of an offensive line they had. So for me, I think that's where they have to start. Like, I think that the system and the idea and all of that is great in theory, right? But we also have to make sure that we get that supporting cast. And with the supporting cast, I'm referring to that offensive line. See what the offense coordinator brings. Is it a similar a mind? Or do we have the same perspective? So I think this is a step in the right direction, right? We're taking steps forward, one step at a time, one step at a time. This is a really good step in the right direction for the Chicago Bears. So I think there's a lot to look forward to here if you're a Chicago Bear fan.
As Angela says, the movie is Network. Peter Finch played Howard Beale. I'm not going to die anymore. That's what it's from. 1976, before you were born, Armando. I was barely alive, but you weren't alive yet. So that's probably why you didn't remember what it was.
Never heard of that
Never
movie.
Heard of it?
No.
It won an Oscar. He won an Oscar, I think, the guy that yelled at the screen and all that. Angela had a comment here about Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill isn't worth the trouble. The 1 year I played fantasy basketball, I had John Morant during his gun-waving times, never again. I've been pretty vocal about staying away from problem players. Like, I didn't draft George Pickens. Like, I've never drafted Tyreek Hill. Like, and it's not just a moral thing with me, for these things these guys do away. I got enough problems breaking down matchups and worrying if a guy's healthy, Armando. I just don't want to deal with the guys that have the other stuff. I was never in on Antonio Brown. Like, I just, Is that taking it too far? Should I be less strict with that? Because a lot of these players are really good. They just bring so much baggage, and I'm just not interested.
Is the juice worth the squeeze, right? Like that's really what it is for me. Like I look at Hill and what my expectations going into the season was there was going to be a lot of volatility, up and down. I looked at when defenses started figuring out Miami's offense and the timing and stuff like that. We saw a little bit more volatile production from these players, health of the quarterback. So there was a lot of outside of Hill. There was a lot of other red flags with Hill, so I didn't invest. In addition to that, his price was so inflated. You were paying top 5, top 6, right, overall pick for someone that takes that, that brings that kind of risk to the table. So no, for me, it depends on the player and where you're taking him and stuff like that. I tend to avoid problem players, and I let that dictate, especially the early round drafts. If there's a problem player, I say, okay, maybe I'm going in a different direction. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with avoiding these kind of players. I think it's just, for me, it's just a matter of, is it worth the risk where you're taking them or not? And if it's not worth the risk, don't do it.
Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com obviously knows his football, as we're discussing here, but he also is part of our basketball team, and he's been talking about how his role has been increasing there. Are you locked in now, Armando? You got the schedule down? You got everything down? You're good to go over at FG?
Yeah, I'll be on. I got the cheat sheet coming out tonight. I'll be in Discord with Fensty today and tomorrow as well. I'll be on Discord as well. I'm covering NBA tomorrow as well. We talk about football, but the NBA is fun. You gotta go check it out. Tonight's slate is a challenging one. There's 5 games. Of the 5 games, Ray, 4 have double-digit spreads. So it is one of those wild nights that that there's going to be some variance or whatnot. But there's always other good slates that you could check out or whatnot. But yeah, you check us out on Discord. We're answering questions. I was in there yesterday as well with Fensterman, answering some questions. There was a lot of nice games there throughout the day. So basketball is rolling along really well now.
Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner at fantasyguru.com and look for the MVP plan, which includes basketball. But it's a huge plan. It includes basketball, hockey, MMA, PGA, NASCAR, horse racing, soccer. All of it's one package. Ray, I don't care about soccer. That's fine. Maybe you care about NASCAR. Maybe you only care about basketball, but that's fine. We'll give you all the other ones too. So it's the MVP plan over there. Basically everything that's not baseball or football. And that includes, as Armando was talking about, Discord rooms, articles, any live streams, podcasts, all that stuff over at fantasyguru.com. So Armando will close down the football reviews with you next week. We'll talk some tight ends, and then we'll figure out what to talk about. Maybe we'll start opening packs up again on the show. We'll figure out something for your visits on Tuesday, but we appreciate it. And thanks for joining us today.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me on, and everyone have a great week.
He's Armando Marsal. I'm Ray Flowers. Don't forget to watch the Elite Sports Show 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Jeff Mans is back, so in a couple hours, check that out. And check us out every day on Fantasy Sports Daily at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, powered by fantasyguru.com.